From Wall Street to Main Street to help small business owners have the same capital as corporate America and give them the same resources as a larger company. We cover business funding, business credit, scaling, business consulting, and much more. Check out the website at shieldadvisorygroup.com. Welcome to the show, The Liquid Lunch Project.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project. I am Matthew R. Meehan alongside my partner, the Professor Luigi Rosabianca. What's on tap today, Lou?
Matthew, we're going to tap into our inner Lewis and Clark today, and we're heading to Oregon. And in Oregon, we found the author of The Amazon Way, John Rossman. But that's just scratching the surface. This man's a keynote speaker. He's got his own business. He does wonderful advisory for small business as well. So let's start with a wonderful introduction to John Rossman. Welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Hey, great to be here, guys. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, thank you for sending us the book. I literally just finished reading The Amazon Way a couple of nights ago. But for the audience that hasn't read it, and they're going to read it next week because they're all going to order it right now, what is The Amazon Way?
Yeah, so the Amazon Way, Amazon's 14 leadership principles, is really like my story at Amazon. So I joined Amazon early. I was an early executive there. I launched the marketplace business, which is third-party selling at Amazon.com. And that's really when we were getting clear about, well, you know, what is Amazon? Both what do we believe in? How do we get things done? And what's the business model, right? And we really built kind of this concept of kind of the flywheel and a platform business model. And this it's a short book, and it really is like, it's not about Amazon. It's about what you can take from a company like Amazon to apply into your own leadership, your own style, your own approaches to achieve hard results. And really, that's everything that I'm focused on, is helping companies compete in the digital era, which means you have to be able to get more done with less to compete. And so that's really what the story is about. And it's been a real gift. People seem to like it. I wrote it. I had one design principle in mind when I wrote it, and it was somebody could read it on one plane ride with a glass of wine. And so it's a pretty tight book. I don't tend to repeat myself, and it's been a lot of fun.
John, sorry to rain on your parade, pal. Took me 3 glasses. So let me ask you, these 14 points, you remind me of like Woodrow Wilson's 17 points of light. Is this something that yourself, Bezos, and the founding fathers came up with? Or was this sort of a very grassroots, organic, hey, look, this is working, let's keep doing it. That's working, that's not. How did these 14 points come up?
Yeah, so I was at Amazon from early 2002 through late 2005. They're leadership principles, right? They were not codified at that point, but we were working on every single day, right? Like customer obsession was like the one clearly stated principle at that point, but we were trying to figure out like, hey, how do we hold each other accountable? How do we make decisions? How do we think big? And it was 2008 when these got kind of codified. And I had left Amazon in late 2005. I was deep into my consulting business. I was advising the Gates Foundation, and one of my clients at the Gates Foundation pulled me into his office one day, and I still work with him. His name's Greg Shaw. And Greg said, like, you know, John, you do a nice job of kind of taking the little strategies, the little mechanisms from Amazon and inserting it into our business. I think you ought to write a book about it, because we see the impact of this company in the Northwest, but it's coming, you know, and everything, right? And so we wrote the first edition in 2014. We just released the third edition of it, had some really nice updates to it. But these principles Amazon took patience in building them, and then they codified them. One of the appendices, new appendix in the Amazon Way, is about building your own leadership principles. And one of the things I talk about is etch 'em in Jello, right? Like spend some time, try to think through like, you know, what do we prioritize? How do we work together? How to make these really tactical, and then wear them for a while, try them out, use them for a while. But I've worked with some companies who want to like, hey, we're going to spend a week defining our principles, and then that's it. Like we're putting them to work. And it's like, yeah, you know, it takes some time, right? Like this is like a constitution. Take your time building it, practice it, change them slowly, but you can evolve them over time. It's different than other types of kind of guidelines or policies that you might be trying to put into your business.
John, when you're consulting with smaller businesses, not quite of the scale of Amazon, do you find yourself tapping into these core principles and extrapolating them onto theirs?
Absolutely. The thing I like about both the principles and the techniques behind the principles is that they scale. You can use these as an individual, you can use them as a team, you can use them as a company, you can use them as a big enterprise. And so they can have impact, and they apply at kind of any one level. For example, one of the real principles at Amazon is like the principle is are right a lot. Leaders are right a lot. They have strong judgment and good instincts. They seek diverse perspectives and work to disconfirm their beliefs. So one of the practices behind that is find somebody who doesn't believe in the core assumption of whatever your thesis is, your value proposition, and listen to them. Like, ask for critical feedback on like your product, your service, what your concept is. All you can do is learn, right? And so that counterintuitive move of finding people who disagree with you and invite them to critique your concept is an absolute championship habit. Another one is about thinking big. Thinking small is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Leaders create and communicate a bold direction that inspires results. They think differently and look around corners for ways to serve customers. One of the ways Amazon does this is they have this culture of writing. So whenever you have an idea, a proposal, a project, something you want to do, you write it out. Narratives, future press releases, frequently asked questions. And this habit of writing versus just talking about it or putting together a lightweight PowerPoint presentation, when ideas are complex, which is like most of strategy and competition, right? When things are not simplistic, writing them out helps you think them through so much better. And you not only think them through so much better, you can communicate them to others so much better, right?
John,
and so these are championship habits that work up and down the scale.
You have no idea how right you are. Matt and I just had this situation happen to us literally 5 days ago. We're taking on a new project here, something very humble, not Amazonian, but we're taking on a humble project, and we're working with one of the engineers on how to work out the flow. And we spent hours, literally hours, speaking to him. We finally got to a point that said, let me jot this down into 3 paragraphs. I made 3 succinct paragraphs. You know what his reply was? Oh, I get it. We can save ourselves 2 days.
I work with a lot of founders and ideas on like, okay, they have a concept, right? And so we don't write just one version of that. We really work on variations of it. And it's amazing, like, does it work like this, or does it work like this, or does it work like that? Is the experience like this? Do you price for it this way? Does the distribution work that way? Like, really thinking through the slight variations of the business model. And they step back by the end. It's like, oh, there's so much we haven't thought about. But especially when you're small, you got to pick one clear path and try to execute upon that as crisply as possible, and then tune and execute along the way. But too many times people start off with a concept and it's so gray, it's so murky, other people misinterpret it, and so you don't execute well. And so it's all about idea definition and then execution.
John, we found that people work really well through analogy and case studies. We know you work with tons of companies. Can you give us one salient example, without naming your clients' names, but one example where you kind of kept pivoting and figuring it out, and then finally that cylinder fit in that round hole after many attempts? This way we could have a more concrete takeaway on how we could sort of keep implementing it. Because Matt and I really feel that one of the key character traits of successful entrepreneurs is that resilience. Just keep trying until you figure it out.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like, so a couple of things I'll talk about is, so you reference like Amazon is this big company. When I was at Amazon, we were a small company, right? We 90% of the business was books, music, video. We had our first $1 billion quarter in 2002, right? Today, it's a $500 billion revenue company. And we went about our work with these exact same ways that Amazon executes today. And I think that's one of the powers of kind of this playbook of principles with execution to it is that it creates culture, and that culture can help scale as your business grows, right? But an example of this, I'll relate back to the business I launched and scaled at Amazon, the marketplace business, right? So this was the third attempt of a third-party selling platform when everybody was telling Bezos internally and externally, like, I don't think you should do this. Like, you've tried, you failed. But Jeff was committed to the strategy, but knew he had to keep tuning the technique, the execution of it. And so we wrote a really clear, what's called a future press release for the marketplace business. And one sentence in it really defined the entirety of why it was successful. And that one sentence was, a third-party seller will be able to execute will be able to register and sell an item in the middle of the night without talking to anyone to delight a customer as though Amazon, the retailer, had done it. You unpack that one sentence and there's a lot implied there. It made for a very complex choreography between Amazon and seller, completely different than the big guy at that point, which was eBay, which was just a flea market approach to selling. We took full accountability for the customer experience. Therefore, we had to make it both easy but robust with our sellers. And so that one sentence, and we worked that future press release and what that meant so many times until we finally go, yep, that's how we want this to execute. One sentence, that made all the difference. And then we took it to market with that. And so that's an example of really parsing words and value propositions and what your brand promise is to your customers that can really make a difference.
John, how do you sleep with yourself at night? You are the reason why.
My wife asks me that question all the time.
You're the reason Matt has 12 boxes on his front stoop right now.
Well, I'd like to take accountability for that. I played a small role in that. One of the, I think, stories that people forget about Amazon, back to Amazon big, successful now, it's it didn't come together that way. But we launched the marketplace business in late 2002. It really took 6 or 7 years, and the combination of marketplace with Prime, the loyalty program, with another capability called FBA, Fulfillment by Amazon. And it was really that three-legged stool that really took the rocket ship off. Nobody forecasted that. Nobody knew we needed all three of those components. We only knew one component at the time. You just have to keep at it and keep refining, but keep coming back to your value proposition and how you manifest that value proposition. And that was the secret, was kind of the combination of an invention and innovation with patience and a strong value proposition.
I've been quiet this whole time. I'm sitting here taking notes because I love absolutely everything that's coming out of your mouth right now. One thing we've learned, and we had Dave Selinger. I don't know if you know him. He was on the podcast too. He was at Amazon when in the early days as well. And he was telling us they had this magic box. It was a deal of a day, right?
Yep.
Everybody thought after Amazon was successful, there was some amazing algorithm that was behind it that put out this deal. He goes, no, we would just pick something the night before and go do it, But what amazes me is Amazon kept trying. They just kept trying different things until they got something that worked, right? So
and people don't remember all the failures, and everything, right? There's so many failures, and Bezos talks about one big winner pays for 1,000 little failures, right? Now he plays kind of a unique.
I want you to say that again, loud and slowly, so that this audience understands that. And I want that tattooed to every entrepreneur's arm.
One big winner pays for 1,000 concepts that don't work, right? So you should read the Amazon shareholder letters. They're the best writing out there. One of the shareholder letters, Jeff talks about hey, they've created 3 dreamy businesses. One is marketplace. One was AWS. I forget what the third one was, but he goes on to talk about, like, what we tend to forget is like all the things we've done that haven't worked out and everything. And that's human nature. Like, focus on the things that come out, but you have to be willing to go at bat, right? Like, people don't forget that, Babe Ruth, the home run king, was also the strikeout king, right? And he always talked about, you can't hit a home run if you don't swing the bat, right? And that's the mentality.
Let me ask you this though. So Amazon VC funded, they had plenty of money coming in, right? And they had a burn rate, right?
Yes and no. Like, they had a ton of commitments. And remember, do you remember the days when Amazon was called Amazon.bomb, Amazon.con, Amazon.org, Amazon.toast? Like, there was literal going concern problems in 2000, 2001 and everything, right? So in the now, today, everything you say is absolutely true. But there was a point in time when it was like, oh, we may be a little over our skis here, right? And everything, right? And it kind of reminds me of today, like, I just wrote my Substack about frugality, and frugality is one of the leadership principles, and I've oftentimes referred to it as the forgotten leadership principle. Well, frugality is roaring back right now, right? But the mentality is you have to do more with less. It's actually an invitation to be more efficient and to innovate more, because you have to continue to drive efficiencies in the business, and you do that through innovation. So sorry, Matt, but I just like some of the assertions need a little more context.
No, I think you made a lot of valid points here, and especially the time that we're in right now, right? Right now we're in a place where maybe we're not Amazon, but the small, medium-sized business community is seeing the credit markets tighten. So they don't have VC funding, but they have these ideas. They want to execute on them, but there's 10 of them. How would you suggest, or they break down what ideas with their limited amount of capital or the war chest that they have saved that they go after?
Well, I try to take 10 and go, what do I think the top 5 are? For those top 5, I would write out, a press release, an announcement of why this thing is successful. Maybe write a couple of versions for some of them and everything. Continue to debate and refine it. Pick one, and back to the professor's concept of figure out the cheapest way to test that one concept, right? Like prototype, low fidelity prototyping, to be able to test response. There's so many great tools out there today that allow you to prototype and test without having to do the full build in order to get market response to it, right? And then adjust, like learn from it and then adjust. One of the real things you have to be careful of is falling in love with your ideas, right? And this is where, back to one of the things where I talked about, invite in others who don't agree with your idea and ask them to beat up your concept, right? You'll learn some things by that. But that's the way to cheaply prototype and test and pick your best path. One of the leadership principles, I already mentioned this one, is are right a lot. At the end of the day, you can't just keep firing blanks and testing. You actually have to be a good judgment of concepts, and the way that you become a better judge of concepts is by writing them out.
We were talking about getting to a minimal viable product with something that we're doing, and then getting the market to see if it works for the market without going all in, right? I think there's a lot of people out there that just spend a lot of time making the best product, and then there's no market out there.
Yeah. I mean, you can even do things before an MVP, right? Just like create a landing page that is for the product and try to run some Facebook ads for it and see how people respond to it, or write a LinkedIn article about your concept and ask, like, what would be your interest in this concept? Like really test out the market before you even go to the effort of an MVP, because an MVP is a viable product, right? I'm talking about doing stuff even before you build out the MVP.
I love that.
John, let me ask you this. What's your opinion versus developing that internally or acquiring a company that's already doing it and then maybe just putting on a little cherry on top?
Context to that question is everything. I don't have a bias. I've seen both work, both fail. and everything. Either one can work, but I in either case, you just have to have a strong thesis for what you're going to do.
Love it. Love it. So, John, you've written the book. One of the founding.
I've written three books, actually. This is just the bestseller here is The Amazon Way.
So what are the other two? Tell us the other two.
So the other two, so I mentioned kind of the Amazon Way, Amazon's 14 leadership principles is kind of a lightweight read, right? There's this concept in writing called TLDR, too long didn't read, right? And so I don't try to suffer from TLDR. I wrote another book called Think Like Amazon, 50 and a half ideas to become a digital leader. That's like the full playbook of all the mechanisms and techniques from Amazon. And so Think Like Amazon and the Amazon Way are a nice complement together. One's kind of the intro story. The other's like the full playbook, like the Bill Belichick offensive playbook binder, and everything, right? And then I wrote a book about the Internet of Things. And it's a strategy book, and it's to help a business leader understand how can the Internet of Things, which is the simple pattern of putting sensors on things and getting data to improve business, to provide a new customer value proposition. So I wrote a book called The Amazon Way on IoT, and it's really a business strategy book to help leaders think through how can the Internet of Things impact my business and provide a stronger customer value proposition.
I'm gonna get all three. Really? Any audiobooks or no?
Oh, they're all available in audiobook. They're all available by Kindle and paperback, and all of them have been translated into multiple languages. I think the Amazon Way has been translated into 12 languages.
Awesome. And let me guess, everybody can get it on Amazon.
You can get primarily on Amazon. Yep, exactly. They got 65% of the book market, right? Like it's pretty easy.
So when you were there, right, and they were thinking about all these different ideas, and there were music and books, what made you guys sit down and say, we need to develop something so outside of our realm?
Customer orientation is what took us there, right? Like we always started with the customer and worked backwards. And it was just obvious to us that a customer wants more than books, music, video. And our mission, started off to be the world's biggest bookstore, and pretty quickly it's like, there's a lot more than just books out there, right? And so, but everything that Amazon has started from an intense customer curiosity. Like, what sucks in a customer's life? Where's the friction? What do they need to get done? And how can our unique combination of kind of digital capabilities and efficiencies and the way we think through problems apply? And that's the thinking that took them into, really their most successful business is AWS, right? Amazon Web Services. And that came from our own internal operational challenges of technical infrastructure. And we did a small test, and we found out that developers loved the on-demand commuting model. And it's like, oh God, maybe there's a business there, right? And so that's just an example of where, kind of figuring out all the customers, what their job to be done is, and then working backwards to like, well, how could I build something that's better than the current alternative? The one thing I'd say that I think one of the things I learned from Amazon is, if you really want to win market and charge a premium fee, you can't just be better. Like you've got to have a value proposition that is completely differentiated. And that concept of how to make something an outrageous value proposition, an outrageous value, puts people into a completely new kind of problem solving and unconventional thinking mindset. One of the things Bezos, he was asked about Amazon Prime and like what his mindset was behind that. And he goes, I wanted somebody to be irresponsible to not sign up for Prime, right? Like that's a completely different mindset of how to create a compelling product or a compelling service than like, oh, I'm going to make it a little bit better, a little bit cheaper, a little bit faster than the market is. You can win with that approach, but it's tough to really have outsized gains with that type of value proposition.
John, are these codes so ingrained in Amazon that even though management may change successively through generation after generation, but Amazon will maintain that avant-garde resilience?
Yeah, yes. And that's part of the goal of it, is to scale a culture, to scale a leadership playbook. And that's why the leadership principles are so core to who they are. And that's been, Amazon's a 27-year-old company now, right? Like there's been a ton of rotation, but these leadership principles have been a major component of why they are who they are. And frankly, why I continue to be really optimistic about them being continuing to be a huge, successful, and not just huge and successful, but an innovative company, a company that surprises you in new ways going forward.
John, you had a great career at Amazon, but let's rewind a little bit. How did you end up at Amazon? Where did it all start?
I was a partner at Arthur Andersen. I went to 2000 internet go-go days, right? I went to be the VP of a data integration technology company, run consulting for this company. We launched product in fall of 2001, which some of your listeners may not remember. If you think this is a little bit of a market adjustment, that was a real market adjustment, right? And so venture capital, we raised a bunch of money, venture capital completely dried up, and more importantly, IT spending completely dried up. A former colleague of mine at Arthur Andersen was a finance executive at Amazon. As I started thinking about the next thing, Jason invited me in. He goes, "We got something brewing that you should come talk to us about." I did 23 interviews at Amazon. It took over 4 months. It really was a consulting project, is what it was. As I look back to it, it's like, and I understood both the strategy and what because it was something that took me pulling together all these various capabilities and teams from Amazon. I had a very small team to help launch this marketplace business, but we relied on so many other teams in order to stitch it together and everything. But I hit the ground absolutely running in March of 2002. We launched that fall. We launched November of 2002 with just the apparel tab. We had like 35 sellers at launch and everything. But that's kind of what got me to Amazon, was kind of, market adjustment and like, hey, you keep moving forward, right?
Absolutely. I remember 2001. I had just started my career on Wall Street. It wasn't a pretty time. It was not a pretty time.
Again, I just wrote a newsletter yesterday about frugality, and, like, cycles happen. People forget. They always think like, oh, we're at the end of history, right? Like this will never happen. Another cycle, another war will never happen. Guess what? Cycles happen, and they will continue to happen. And we're just in one right now.
I'm kind of excited about this cycle though right now too, because obviously we see all the layoffs going on in tech, but we also know from these layoffs, there are going to be some amazing companies that we haven't even imagined yet to be formed.
From trial comes a lot of good things, right? And so you're absolutely right. There will be a lot of really great things, and companies will be focused, will sharpen to execute better, be a little more oriented towards profit versus just pure growth. But they need to continue to innovate, and there's some things you can do to be leaner and meaner and more oriented towards success in your innovation.
I think what we're going to wind up seeing, and I'm just using Meta as an example because the layoffs just happened the other day, right? You're going to have all these engineers that really wanted to work on a product, but they didn't have time, that are going to sit around. Maybe they're sitting around their dining room table right now and talking, I'm going to start working on this project. And I'd really like to see what comes out of that moving forward, right? The phoenix that comes out of the fire. What do you think about Web3 and where it's going?
There's probably a lot of different definitions of what Web3 is. I don't have a deep opinion on cryptocurrency or NFTs, I do think that blockchain as a distributed, trusted, irrefutable database, like there's some interesting use cases for that. And I do continue to think that, the overall financial services space has a ton of legacy, non-value added, middle layers that can probably be reinvented and re-architected. And so I think that's my opinion on Web3. I always thought NFTs was kind of an interesting phenomena, but I didn't think it would be as big as it was, people were talking about it to be.
So I think my personal opinion is this is 1999, right? With all the companies that just started, and we're gonna have to let the dust settle to see what rises out of that too, going forward.
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy in that, 100 ideas get started. You look forward and go, man, there were some really dumb ideas, but 5 worked. 5 were really big ideas, right? It's tough to predict what those really 5 big ideas out of that 100 are, and that's the benefit of being able to look at history.
But we only need one, John.
You only need one.
John, can you tell everybody how they can get in touch with you, buy your book, find you on the social channels if you're on any of them?
Yeah, so The Amazon Way at Amazon, again, in paperback, Kindle, and Audible edition. Probably the easiest way is LinkedIn, John Rossman. My website is rossmanpartners.com, and I have a Substack newsletter called the Digital Leader Newsletter, available for free. And I write kind of a weekly lesson about being a change agent, being a strategist, and being an innovator.
So tell us a little bit more about Rossman Partners, what you're doing right now.
Rossman Partners advises clients on how to compete and win in the digital era. And it's always this combination of kind of how do we debate a better strategy, a specific capability that we want to do, and then how do we test it and iterate and execute as crisply as possible. And I'm never the industry expert. But I bring a toolkit of capabilities, including leadership principles and the ways to think through things to a client. And we always get a lot more done and come up with a better idea than I think they would have on their own.
And what do you have brewing? What do you got going next? What do you want to do?
Well, I mentioned
that mind's going.
Yeah, I mentioned one cool thing. So my youngest just graduated from college, and both my boys were athletes, and we really leaned into getting to participate in that. And so I've got a lot more time available to me now. So I'm just really looking forward to leaning into my work a bit more than I did over the past 6 years and stuff. But I'm working on a new book that is all about how that kind of this hidden technique of starting with outcomes is a difference maker in a lot of places, and where people they tend to skip in real definition of what the end thing is that they want to get done, and then that makes them inefficient in kind of getting there. And so it's a book about starting with outcomes.
I love that. Can we dive deep in there for a little bit? Because
yeah.
I'm a big believer in, and there's very different thoughts on this, right? Some people say, I'm a big believer in, if I'm starting a company, I want to know how I'm exiting the company, right? So we reverse engineer that to where we have to be and decide what industry we want to get into. And then some people say, I'm never going to exit the company. What do I need to think about that for? Because it's going to take my eye off the ball. What are your thoughts on something like that?
Well, I think a financial plan is one great way to start with an end in mind and then work backwards. And that is one lens, but an important lens, but it's a key example where somebody starts with a concept and it's kind of fuzzy, it's out there. And because of that, A, they're inefficient in getting to it, and B, they have a tough time adding others to the team and everybody working towards a specific accomplishment, because the end point is pretty fuzzy, right? Point B is too fuzzy. And I think that doing it at kind of both the mission level, the strategy level, the organization and how we organize work level, and then at your personal level, again, it kind of scales up and down, that in every step you can do a better job of starting with crisp, super clear definition of what the outcome is that you think you want to accomplish. And that will help you identify ways to get there faster. You'll inherently be more efficient at getting there, and you're able to delegate or direct others to get to that same point so much better because it's crisply defined. And so that to me is really the hopefully unique thesis that the book is going to bring together.
So the outcome is crisply defined. I definitely believe that. But there also has to be points where you've got to be flexible, right?
No.
I mean, Amazon started a bookstore, and now they're this monster, right? Nintendo is a trading card company, right?
It's just a component to the complete playbook you need. But I think it's a component that is not emphasized nearly enough or recognized enough, right? And so, in a book, you don't try to accomplish everything, right? You try to make like one meaningful additive point to how somebody can get things done. So the additive thesis that I'm bringing is like, hey, there's lots of ways to get better at defining the output. And then all of your execution disciplines that you're talking about fall in place better. And so it doesn't replace everything that you're talking about. This just helps make you better at doing that and to pick better choices, to make better option choices, because there's only a couple of things that we can choose to go for, right? And picking what to go for is the most important decision that management makes.
You're so right, and especially with writing a book. Me and Luigi are going through this right now, and it's our first book that's going to be coming to the market, right? And I'm like, but we got to add this, we got to add this, we got to add this. And it's too long to read. We're going to lose everybody in Luigi's. Matt, we can't.
Remember, TLDR, too long didn't read, right? Like, I think the best books have a specific, like any product or service, have a value proposition. What are you adding to what's already out there, right? And then stick to that. And that discipline is in business, and writing a book as a good example is super hard to, and can be a really destructive word. And I've seen that in so many ways, right? And so, a book, especially, I think to write a good book, you need to contribute something new. Stick to that. Focus on that.
Yeah, we're the KISS model is what we're keeping it at, right? It's not a textbook at the end of the day. So, John, we really appreciate your time. We want to be respectful of it. Thank you for being on. But before you do run, I do have one question for you. What's the product you order most off Amazon?
What's the product? Well, I have a French bulldog, boss man. And so I order this canned dog food every other week from Amazon.
That's amazing. How many packages do you think you get from Amazon in a day?
How many what?
Packages. How many deliveries?
My guess is there's probably 3 packages a week from Amazon to my house on average. How about yours?
Literally about 3 to 4 a day. I have to have a conversation with my wife after this podcast.
Did you keep any employee perks?
Well, there were no employee perks, right? Free email was like the employee perk, and everything. So frugality, exactly.
John, thank you so much for your time, guys. That's a wrap of the.
You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the show. And make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We'll see you on the next episode of The Liquid Lunch Project.